Enslaved Odyssey to the west. This game is one of those hidden gems that just didn't get the attention it deserved. Enslaved Odyssey to the West comes from Ninja Theory, the same team behind Hellblade, and it's got this awesome mix of action, story, and just flat out cool world design. You play as Monkey, this tough, athletic dude who gets stuck working with Trip, a tech-savvy girl who forces him to protect her by putting this headband on him that'll literally kill him if he doesn't help her. It sounds a bit harsh, right? But the way their relationship evolves is actually one of the best parts of the game. It starts out rocky, like they can't stand each other, but as you play, you see them start to trust and care for each other. The world they've built is so cool. It's set in a post-apocalyptic future, but instead of the usual gray and brown wasteland, everything is green, overgrown, and alive. It's like nature completely took over the ruins of the old world. You'll be climbing crumbling buildings covered in vines and exploring these bright, beautiful environments. It's such a refreshing take on the whole end of the world vibe. Gameplay-wise, it's pretty straightforward but fun. The platforming is smooth and looks awesome, even if it's a bit on rails. The combat is solid. You've got a staff for both melee and ranged attacks. And while it's not super complex, it's satisfying enough. It's not about reinventing the wheel, it's more about keeping you engaged while you soak in the story and the world. And speaking of the story, it's way better than you'd expect. Andy Serkis, the guy who played Gollum, does the motion capture and voice for Monkey. And his performance is great. You really feel the emotion in the characters, and the writing keeps you hooked. The music adds a lot too. It's subtle, but it fits perfectly with the tone of the game. If there's anything to complain about, it's that the gameplay can get a little repetitive, and the camera sometimes decides to do its own thing. But honestly, the story and characters more than make up for those small issues. Far Lone Sails. This is one of those games that kind of sneaks up on you. At first glance, it looks simple, almost too simple, but the more you play, the more it pulls you in. It's this quiet, atmospheric adventure where you're piloting a weird hybrid vehicle across a barren landscape. No explosions, no crazy action, just you and your machine trying to keep moving forward. The story here is super minimal, like almost non-existent in a traditional sense. There's no dialogue, no cutscenes, it's all about what you piece together from the environment. You're this lone traveler in what feels like a post-apocalyptic world, and your goal is to keep your strange little vehicle running as you travel through these empty, hauntingly beautiful landscapes. And the vehicle is the heart of the game. You're constantly managing it, refueling, repairing, and keeping it moving. It's like this clunky, charming little machine that somehow feels alive. The gameplay is all about solving small puzzles to keep it going, whether that's finding fuel, dealing with obstacles, or figuring out how to use its sails to harness the wind when you run out of power. What really stands out is the vibe. The art style is simple but stunning, with these wide, desolate landscapes that make you feel small in the best way. The sound design is just as important, the hum of the engine, the creak of the sails, and the occasional music that kicks in when something big happens. It's all very subtle, but it creates such an immersive experience. The game isn't very long, you can finish it in a few hours, but that's kind of the point. It's a short, focused journey that leaves a big impact. It's not trying to overwhelm you with mechanics or story, it just wants you to feel something, whether it's the loneliness of the world or the satisfaction of keeping your little vehicle alive. If you're into quiet, meditative games that are more about the journey than the destination, Far Lone Sails is a must-play. It's the kind of game that sticks with you long after you've finished it. It's simple, sure, but sometimes simple is exactly what you need. Someday You'll Return. Alright, so Someday You'll Return is one of those games that really surprised me. At first it seems like a straightforward psychological horror game, but it ends up being so much more. It's a mix of eerie atmosphere, emotional storytelling, and exploration, all tied together with some really unique mechanics that make it stand out. You play as Daniel, a father searching for his missing daughter, Stella, in the forests of the Czech Republic. Right off the bat, it sets a tense and emotional tone, but as you dig deeper, it becomes clear that this isn't just a simple rescue mission. The game explores themes of guilt, family, and trauma, and it keeps throwing curveballs at you, both narratively and visually. The setting is one of the game's biggest strengths. The forest you're wandering through isn't just some spooky backdrop, it feels alive. It's beautifully designed with dense trees, ancient ruins, and narrow paths that make you feel both in awe and uneasy at the same time. There's a lot of attention to detail here, and the way the environment shifts subtly over time adds to the unsettling vibe. Now, the gameplay. It's not just walking and looking around, there's a lot more going on. You're solving puzzles, crafting items, and even using a smartphone to navigate, read messages, and figure out clues. There's a sense of realism in how these mechanics work, and it keeps you engaged without feeling overly complicated. What really got me though is how the game blends its psychological horror with a very personal story. It's not about jump scares or monsters chasing you, although there are some creepy moments. It's more about the slow buildup of tension and the unsettling realization that Daniel isn't exactly the most reliable narrator. The game keeps you questioning what's real and what's in his head, and it does it in such a clever way. Necrobarista. The premise is simple but awesome. You're in a coffee shop in Melbourne, but it's not your average cafe. This place serves both the living and the dead. The dead get 24 hours to hang around, reflect on their lives, and I guess enjoy a latte before moving on to the afterlife. It's such a cool concept, and the game really leans into it, exploring themes of life, death, and all the messy stuff in between. The characters are what really make this one shine. You've got Maddie, the sarcastic, slightly chaotic barista who runs the shop, and a bunch of other quirky, memorable characters who come and go. The dialogue feels natural, like conversations you'd actually hear, but with just enough snark and heart to make it stand out. It balances humor and emotional weight really well. You'll be laughing one moment and feeling something real the next. The presentation is next level. Unlike most visual novels, which are usually static images and text boxes, Necrobarista is fully 3D. The camera moves around the scenes dynamically, and the art style is this super clean, anime-inspired look that's hard not to love. It makes the whole experience feel way more cinematic and alive. Now, it's not just about clicking through dialogue. There's some light exploration between chapters where you can wander the cafe, learn more about the world, and dive deeper into side stories. These moments give you a breather and help flesh out the setting, which is just as much a character as the people in it. If there's a downside, it's that the pacing can be a bit slow in places, and the story doesn't always dig as deep as it could. But honestly, those are minor issues in a game that's so unique and well crafted. Necrobarista isn't going to be for everyone, but if you're into narrative-driven games with great writing, a killer art style, and a premise that sticks with you, it's absolutely worth your time. It's short, it's sweet, and it's the kind of game that feels like a little hidden treasure. State of mind.
You can reconstruct anyone's life with all that information.
You play as Richard Nolan, a journalist in Berlin in 2048, and man, this guy is not having a great time. His family is falling apart, the world is in chaos, and he's trying to uncover this conspiracy about virtual worlds and digital immortality. What starts as a personal story quickly spirals into something much bigger, touching on the ethical dilemmas of technology and what it means to be human. The world building here is incredible. The game is set in a dystopian future, but it's not all gloom and doom. It's a mix of advanced tech and gritty realism, with neon-lit cityscapes, holograms, and robots everywhere. The visual style is unique too. It's this low-poly aesthetic that looks almost like a living art piece. It's simple but really striking, and it fits the game's themes perfectly. Gameplay-wise, it's pretty straightforward. This is definitely more of a story game than anything else. You'll be walking around, interacting with objects, and solving light puzzles while diving into dialogue-heavy scenes. There's also some switching between different realities, which adds a nice layer to the exploration. It's not super action-packed, but it keeps you engaged with its narrative and atmosphere.
We're uploading 750 people a day.
The story is where this game really stands out. It doesn't just tell you about a dystopian future, it makes you think about the path we're on right now. The writing is solid, and while some of the characters can feel a little stiff, the overall narrative is strong enough to keep you hooked. It's not afraid to get deep and philosophical, but it doesn't beat you over the head with it either. That said, the pacing can feel a bit slow at times, and some sections drag more than they should. Also, the controls and animations can be a little clunky, which might take you out of the experience now and then. But if you can get past that, there's a lot to appreciate here. State of Mind is the kind of game that sticks with you. It's not perfect, but it's ambitious, and it's trying to tell a story that feels relevant and meaningful. If you're into sci-fi cyberpunk vibes, or just games that make you think, this one's worth checking out. It might not blow your mind with its gameplay, but the story more than makes up for it. Ghost of a Tale. Ghost of a Tale is one of those games that doesn't look like much at first glance, but completely wins you over once you get into it. On the surface, it's a stealth adventure game where you play as a tiny mouse Tilo, but it's got so much heart and charm that it ends up being something really special. The premise is simple. Tilo is a minstrel who finds himself trapped in a medieval castle, and his goal is to escape while searching for his wife, Mara. The game's world feels alive, with rich lore and a setting that's somewhere between classic fairy tales and gritty medieval fantasy. It's not a massive open world, but the castle and its surroundings are packed with secrets, details, and characters that make exploring super rewarding. The gameplay leans heavily on stealth. You're a mouse, so you're not exactly built for combat. Most of the time you'll be sneaking around guards, hiding in barrels, or distracting enemies with little tricks like throwing bottles. It's not the most complex stealth system, but it works well and feels fitting for the character. There are also some light RPG elements like quests and dialogue choices, which add a bit of depth without overwhelming you. Visually, this game is stunning, especially for something made by a tiny team. The character models and animations are incredibly detailed. Tilo is one of the most expressive characters I've ever seen in a game. The lighting, textures, and overall art direction make the world feel cozy, but also a little dangerous, like a fairy tale that's just slightly on the darker side. What really makes Ghost of a Tale stand out is its atmosphere. The music, the quiet sound of Tilo's little footsteps, the way the world feels both charming and ominous, it all comes together in a way that's really immersive. The story is emotional without being over the top, and the characters you meet are full of personality. If there's a downside, it's that the game can feel a bit repetitive at times. The stealth mechanics don't evolve much, and some quests involve a lot of backtracking, but honestly the world and the story are so engaging that it's easy to overlook those flaws. Ghost of a Tale is a labor of love, and it shows in every detail. If you're into games with great world building, unique characters, and a strong sense of atmosphere, this one's an absolute gem. It's the kind of game that feels like a hidden treasure, waiting to be discovered. The Council.
William, you dirty traitor.
This game feels like it was made for people who love digging into layered stories and making tough decisions. It's part narrative adventure, part RPG, and it throws you into a mystery that only gets weirder the deeper you go. You play as Louis de Richet, a member of a secretive organization called the Golden Order, who's been summoned to an isolated mansion to find his missing mother. But this isn't just any mansion, it's hosted by Lord Mortimer, a man with way too many secrets, and the guests are some of the most influential figures of the late 18th century, like Napoleon and George Washington. The setup feels like the start of an Agatha Christie novel, but then it starts spiraling into supernatural territory in the best way. What makes the Council stand out is how it handles conversations and choices. It's not just about picking dialogue options, you have skills to upgrade like manipulation, linguistics, and occultism, which open up entirely different paths and interactions. Let's say you're good at politics, you can steer the conversation to get what you want, but if you lack the skill, you might stumble and reveal something you didn't mean to. Every choice feels like it matters, and the game doesn't hold your hand if you mess up.
Excuse me, madam. I'm sure we've met before, but I don't remember.
The story leans hard into conspiracy and the occult, and it does so with zero hesitation. What starts as a search for Louis' mother becomes this sprawling tale of secret societies, ancient artifacts, and power struggles that go way beyond politics. It's weird, ambitious, and filled with moments where you're not quite sure who to trust or if you can even trust yourself. Visually, the game has this old-world elegance that fits its setting perfectly. The mansion is a character in itself, with its grand halls, hidden passages, and art dripping with symbolism. The character designs are distinctive, and while the animations can feel stiff at times, the visual style pulls you into its world. One of the coolest aspects is how it encourages replayability. Because of how skills work and the branching storylines, you can easily miss entire chunks of content on your first playthrough. It's not a game that just pretends your choices matter, they actually do, and they can lead to wildly different outcomes. The Council isn't afraid to take risks, and that's what makes it special. It's a game that keeps you thinking, second-guessing, and wondering what's going to happen next. If you're into intricate narratives with a dose of the supernatural, this one's absolutely worth playing. It's not perfect, but it's unique, and that's what makes it stick with you.
And secrecy are both pillars of the organizations for which we work.
You know, Louis, I've only just now realized that I've been drawn here.
Tales of Vesperia Definitive Edition. Tales of Vesperia doesn't waste time pulling you into its vibrant world of heroes, struggles, and a deep sense of adventure. This is one of those JRPGs that strikes a perfect balance between a gripping story and fun, fast-paced gameplay, all wrapped up in a gorgeous anime-inspired art style that still holds up today. You play as Yuri Lowell, a former knight turned rogue who gets caught up in a journey that starts small, chasing down a thief, but quickly spirals into a world-spanning tale about corruption, power, and doing what's right even when the odds are against you. Yuri is such a standout protagonist, charming, sarcastic, and willing to cross moral lines when needed, which is rare in the genre. He feels more grounded and relatable compared to your typical JRPG lead. Combat is where Vesperia really stands out. It's action-based, so you're actively controlling your character in real time while chaining together flashy combos, dodging attacks, and using special moves called artes. It's fast, fluid, and incredibly satisfying, especially once you master the systems. You can switch between characters mid-fight, which keeps things fresh, and there's a surprising amount of strategy involved, especially in tougher battles. The world is expansive and full of life, with towns brimming with NPCs, hidden side quests, and gorgeous environments that make you want to explore every nook and cranny. The cel-shaded art style and bold colors give the game a timeless look, and the soundtrack is equally impressive, blending epic orchestral tracks with more laid-back tunes that match the mood perfectly. That said, Tales of Vesperia is one of the most beloved entries in the Tales series for a reason. Its mix of heartfelt storytelling, lovable characters, and addictive combat make it an adventure that sticks with you. Whether you're a longtime JRPG fan or just curious to try something new, this one's a must-play. It's the kind of game that reminds you why this genre has such a dedicated following. In the Fidelio Incident. The story begins with a plane crash off the coast of Iceland. You play as Stanley, who survives the crash and must navigate a freezing, desolate landscape to find his wife Leonore, who's stranded somewhere nearby. It's a simple setup, but the layers start to reveal themselves as you uncover the couple's backstory through audio diaries and environmental clues. It's not just about survival, it's about redemption, secrets, and the lengths we go to for the people we love. Visually, the game is stunning in its own understated way. The icy landscapes are harsh and unforgiving, but also eerily beautiful. The game makes excellent use of lighting and sound to build tension, whether it's the howling wind, cracking ice, or the faint echoes of Beethoven's music in the background. The environmental storytelling is subtle but effective. You'll stumble across pieces of the couple's past, and every discovery feels significant. Gameplay-wise, it's straightforward. You're exploring the environment, solving light puzzles, and managing Stanley's warmth to avoid freezing to death. The mechanics are simple, but they serve the story while keeping the focus on the emotional journey, rather than complicated systems. What really stands out is how the game ties everything to its themes. The harshness of the environment mirrors the challenges in Stanley and Leonore's relationship, and the use of Beethoven's music adds a layer of depth that feels both personal and grand at the same time. It's not just background noise, it's woven into the narrative in a way that enhances the emotional impact. Now, as for any criticism, it's that the game is short, about 2 to 3 hours, and some players might find the pacing a bit slow, but honestly, the length feels appropriate for the story it's telling. It's a focused experience that doesn't overstay its welcome. The Fidelio Incident isn't about flashy mechanics or groundbreaking gameplay, it's about telling a heartfelt story in a way that feels intimate and meaningful. If you're into narrative-driven games that prioritize atmosphere and emotion, this is a journey worth taking. It's a game that doesn't just tell you a story, it makes you feel it. Bright Memory Infinite. Bright Memory Infinite is the kind of game that doesn't waste a second showing off what it's got. It's a fast-paced, adrenaline-fueled first-person shooter that feels like the best parts of a blockbuster action movie cranked up to 11. It's flashy, intense, and frankly a little wild in the best way. You play as Shelia, a badass operative caught up in a bizarre mix of ancient relics, futuristic tech, and supernatural phenomena. The story is, let's just say, secondary to the action. It's there and it throws some cool ideas at you, but this is really a game about feeling unstoppable as you fight your way through waves of enemies using a mix of guns, swords, and high-tech abilities. The gameplay is where Bright Memory Infinite really shines. It's all about speed and style. You can seamlessly switch between shooting, slashing with your sword, and using Shelia's special abilities like a grappling hook or telekinesis to keep enemies on their toes. The combat is fast and satisfying, with a combo system that rewards you for chaining together attacks in creative ways. It feels like a mix of Doom Eternal and Devil May Cry, and that's not a comparison I make lightly. One of the coolest things about Bright Memory Infinite is how it doesn't overstay its welcome. It's a short game, you can finish it in a few hours, but it's tightly packed with high energy moments, set piece battles, and some jaw-dropping visuals. There's no filler here, just pure, concentrated action. That said, the game isn't without its flaws. The story, while ambitious, can feel disjointed and a bit hard to follow. The voice acting and dialogue are hit or miss, which can undercut the intensity of certain scenes. But honestly, when the gameplay is this fun, it's easy to let those issues slide. Bright Memory Infinite is like a roller coaster, short, thrilling, and packed with moments that'll have you grinning from ear to ear. If you're a fan of fast-paced action games that blend gunplay and melee combat in a stylish way, this one is absolutely worth checking out. Just don't expect a deep narrative, you're here for the ride, and what a ride it is. Return of the Obra Dinn. Return of the Obra Dinn isn't just a game, it's a puzzle wrapped in a mystery, wrapped in an old school aesthetic that immediately grabs your attention, created by Lucas Pope, the mind behind Papers, Please. It's a one-of-a-kind experience that puts you in the role of an insurance investigator trying to piece together the fate of the 60 crew members of the ill-fated Obra Dinn. You arrive at the ship, docked eerily and abandoned, armed with only a journal and a magical pocket watch called the Memento Mortem. This device lets you step into the moment of someone's death, freezing time so you can see the exact scene and hear a snippet of dialogue leading up to it. Your job? Use these snapshots along with the ship's log and your own deductive skills to identify each crew member and determine their fate. The gameplay is pure detective work. There's no hand-holding here. Every clue, from accents and dialogue to small details in the environment, is something you have to piece together yourself. It's like a giant, intricate logic puzzle, and the satisfaction of correctly solving even one person's fate is unmatched. What really sets the game apart is its visual style. It's designed to look like an old Macintosh game with a stark monochrome palette that somehow feels rich and textured. The art style isn't just a gimmick, it makes every death scene feel like a haunting piece of art. The sound design is equally impressive. The snippets of dialogue, the creaking of the ship, and the ominous score all add to the atmosphere, pulling you deeper into the mystery. Every detail, whether it's a name shouted in a storm or the faint crackle of gunfire, feels deliberate and meaningful. Return of the Obra Dinn isn't for everyone. It demands patience, attention to detail, and a willingness to think outside the box. The lack of traditional action or fast pacing might turn off some players, but for those who enjoy unraveling a good mystery, it's an absolute masterpiece. What makes it so special is how it respects your intelligence. It trusts you to figure things out without holding your hand, and the reward is a deep sense of accomplishment as you slowly untangle the fates of the crew. If you're into detective games, puzzles, or just something truly unique, Return of the Obra Dinn is a game you need to experience. It's a rare gem that feels like nothing else out there.
Let me help you.
Thymesia. Thymesia is a dark, gritty action RPG that doesn't hide its influences. It wears its Soulsborne inspirations proudly, but it adds its own twist to stand out. If you're a fan of fast-paced combat with a heavy dose of challenge, this one's worth a closer look. You play as Corvus, a mysterious masked figure navigating a plague-ridden kingdom teetering on collapse. The story is fragmented and cryptic, much like its inspirations, but the gist is that alchemy and greed have doomed the world, and you're here to uncover the truth and possibly set things right. It's not a narrative-driven experience, but the grim setting and scattered lore give you enough to chew on while you focus on the real star of the show, the combat. And, oh man, the combat is where Thymesia shines. It's fast, precise, and brutal. Corvus wields a sword for light attacks and a spectral claw for heavy hits, and you'll constantly swap between dodging, parrying, and attacking to survive. The claw mechanic is a standout. It lets you replay weapons from enemies, which you can then use against them. This adds a layer of strategy, as each play weapon has unique effects, and deciding which ones to use can mean the difference between life and death. The boss fights are another highlight. They're tough but fair, with each one demanding that you learn its patterns and punish mistakes. It's the kind of challenge that makes victory feel genuinely earned. Visually, Thymesia nails its atmosphere. The kingdom is bleak with desolate towns, eerie forests, and blood-soaked battlefields that ooze dread. The art style might not be the most detailed out there, but it's effective in creating a world that feels oppressive and unforgiving. The music, with its somber and haunting tones, complements the setting perfectly. That said, the game isn't without its flaws. The environments can feel a bit repetitive, and the story doesn't have the same depth or intrigue as other games in the genre. The shorter length might also leave some players wanting more. But for those who enjoy tight, challenging combat and a moody, plague-infested setting, Thymesia delivers. It's not reinventing the wheel, but it's a solid entry in the action RPG space, and its unique mechanics give it just enough of its own identity. If you're into games like Bloodborne or Sekiro and want something in a similar vein, Thymesia is worth a try. It's intense, satisfying, and unapologetically punishing. Steelrising. Steelrising takes the familiar formula of action RPGs and gives it a fascinating twist by dropping you into an alternate version of 18th century France, where King Louis XVI has unleashed an army of clockwork machines to crush the revolution. It's a game that blends historical fantasy with challenging combat, offering a fresh setting for fans of the genre. You play as Aegis, a highly advanced automaton with a sleek design and a deadly skill set. Originally built as a bodyguard for Queen Marie Antoinette, Aegis quickly becomes the revolution's last hope. The concept of a sentient automaton navigating the chaos of a mechanical uprising is a unique spin, and the game leans into its setting with environments and enemies that feel ripped from an eerie steampunk nightmare. The combat is at the heart of Steelrising, and it's where the game takes some risks. It's clearly inspired by Souls-like mechanics, but it carves its own path with a more fluid and customizable approach. Aegis has access to a wide array of weapons, blades, maces, even wrist-mounted firearms, and each one offers distinct playstyles. The elemental abilities like frost grenades and fire-infused weapons add variety and strategy to the fights. Boss battles are another standout. These mechanical monstrosities are intimidating, and while they don't always hit the level of precision or difficulty you'd find in something like Dark Souls, they're still memorable and satisfying to overcome. The setting does a lot of heavy lifting here. Paris is rendered as a dark, moody playground filled with crumbling landmarks and ominous streets. It's an alternate history that feels alive with atmosphere, and exploring the city, unlocking shortcuts and discovering hidden areas scratches that Soulsborne itch. That said, Steelrising isn't perfect. The enemy variety can feel limited, and the overall challenge might not satisfy hardcore fans of the genre. The animations and controls, while decent, sometimes feel just a bit clunky compared to the best in the business. But what Steelrising lacks in polish, it makes up for with creativity and heart. The mix of historical intrigue, steampunk vibes, and solid gameplay mechanics make it a unique entry in the action RPG space. If you're looking for something familiar yet fresh, this game offers a stylish and satisfying adventure through a mechanical revolution. Thaumaturge. The Thaumaturge is a dark, narrative-rich RPG that takes the supernatural and blends it seamlessly with a gritty historical setting. Set in early 20th century Warsaw under Russian rule, the game delivers an atmosphere that's equal parts oppressive and mystical. It's a fascinating mix of political tension, personal struggles, and supernatural chaos. You play as a Thaumaturge, someone with the rare ability to summon and control ethereal creatures called Saluters. These beings are just tools for combat their manifestations of human emotions and desires, each tied to the darker parts of people's psyches. Your job is to use them in solving conflicts and influencing the world around you, often walking the thin line between morality and manipulation. The game takes a strong narrative focus, and it's all about choices, how you interact with characters, how you approach conflicts, and how much you lean on your Saluters to get your way all shape the story. The writing doesn't shy away from moral gray areas, and the decisions you make carry weight, often forcing you to confront uncomfortable truths about yourself and the world. Combat is turn-based with a twist. It blends traditional RPG mechanics with your ability to summon Saluters, each with unique abilities that can turn the tide of battle. The strategy lies not just in how you use them, but in which ones you choose to bond with, as their strengths and weaknesses can impact everything from combat to conversations. Visually, the Thaumaturge captures the time period with an eerie sense of authenticity. The streets of Warsaw are dark, moody, and layered with history, but they're also tinged with an otherworldly glow whenever the Saluters appear. The art direction perfectly balances realism and the supernatural, making the world feel alive and unsettling at the same time. What makes the game stand out is its focus on psychology. The Saluters aren't just cool-looking monsters, they're deeply tied to human emotions and inner struggles. Each encounter with one is like peeling back layers of someone's soul, and it adds a level of depth depth that's rare in RPGs. If there's a downside, it's that the game can feel dense at times. The heavy narrative focus and morally ambiguous choices might not be for everyone, especially if you're looking for straightforward action or clear-cut heroes and villains. The Thaumaturge isn't just another RPG, it's a thoughtful, immersive dive into a world where the line between humanity and the supernatural is razor thin. If you're into complex storytelling, layered characters, and a unique setting that's rarely explored in games, this one's absolutely worth your time. It's haunting, thought-provoking, and unlike anything else out there.
Now our journey is really beginning. Just remember.
Among the Sleep. Among the Sleep is a game that turns something as simple as being a toddler into a deeply unsettling, surreal experience. It's a first-person horror game where you see the world through the eyes of a 2-year-old, and that perspective is what makes it so unique. Everything feels enormous, strange, and just a little bit off, which amps up the tension from the very beginning. The story starts innocently enough. You're at home celebrating your birthday when things suddenly take a dark turn. After waking up in the middle of the night to find your mother missing, you set off on a journey to find her, guided by your oddly comforting teddy bear. What follows is less about jump scares and more about creeping dread as you navigate through a series of dreamlike, nightmarish environments that seem to reflect the emotional turmoil of a child. The gameplay is simple but effective. You're exploring, solving light puzzles, and trying to avoid the occasional terrifying presence. As a toddler, you're not exactly equipped to fight back, so the focus is on hiding and staying out of sight. Crawling feels faster and safer than walking, which is such a clever touch. It constantly reminds you of your vulnerability. What makes Among the Sleep so memorable is its atmosphere. The game does an incredible job of making ordinary things like furniture, shadows, and household objects feel alien and menacing. The way the world shifts and distorts as you move deeper into the story mirrors the way a child might perceive fear or confusion, and it's genuinely unsettling. Also, the game is short, clocking in at just a few hours, but that works in its favor. It doesn't overstay its welcome, and every moment feels deliberate. If there's a downside, it's that some of the mechanics can feel a bit clunky, and the puzzles aren't particularly challenging. But those are minor gripes in a game that offers such a unique and emotional experience. Among the Sleep isn't your typical horror game. It's quieter, more introspective, and much more focused on the emotional impact of its story. If you're looking for something that's creepy but also deeply human, this is a journey worth taking.
Stay away from me!
Laika aged through blood. Imagine a side-scrolling Metroidvania, but instead of running and jumping, you're tearing through the wasteland on a motorbike, balancing brutal combat with tight, skill-based traversal. You play as Laika, a coyote mother on a mission to protect her family and seek revenge against an oppressive occupying force. The game doesn't shy away from its emotional core. This is a story about survival, sacrifice, and the raw desperation of a world gone wrong. The narrative is surprisingly deep, and it doesn't hold back in exploring the harsh realities of its world, which feels alive in a way that few games manage. The gameplay is where Laika truly stands out. The motorbike isn't just a gimmick, it's integral to everything you do. You'll be performing flips, wall riding, and boosting through challenging environments while engaging in intense combat. The controls feel tight and rewarding, especially once you get the hang of chaining maneuvers together. The gunplay adds another layer of depth, letting you aim and shoot mid-air while managing your momentum. It's all about flow, and when it clicks, it's incredibly satisfying. The world is beautifully crafted, with a mix of desolate wastelands, crumbling ruins, and vibrant skies that make every area feel distinct. The hand-drawn art style is both gritty and striking, giving the game a unique visual identity. The soundtrack deserves a shout-out too. It's moody and atmospheric, perfectly complementing the highs of the fast-paced action and the quieter moments of reflection. If there's one thing to watch out for, it's the difficulty. The game can be unforgiving, especially in its combat and platforming sections. But much like the classics it draws inspiration from, the challenge feels fair, it pushes you to get better, and the payoff is worth it. Laika Age Through Blood isn't just another indie game, it's a bold, stylish adventure that dares to do something different. It's emotional, it's raw, and it demands your attention. If you're a fan of Metroidvanias or just looking for something fresh that mixes heart with adrenaline, this one's an absolute must-play. Tom Clancy's Splinter Blacklist. Tom Clancy's Splinter Cell Blacklist doesn't just bring Sam Fisher back into action, it modernizes the stealth genre in a way that feels smooth, intense, and highly rewarding. This game strikes a balance between sticking to its sneaky roots and giving you the flexibility to go loud if the situation calls for it, making it one of the most versatile entries in the series. You step into the shoes of Sam Fisher once again, now leading the elite 4th echelon team. The story kicks off with a terrorist group, the Engineers, launching a series of escalating attacks called the Blacklist, threatening the US. Unless their demands are met, it's a high-stakes, globe-trotting plot full of tense moments, political drama, and the kind of gritty, shadowy ops vibes the series is known for. What makes Blacklist stand out is its gameplay freedom. Whether you're a stealth purist or someone who likes to mix in a bit of chaos, the game accommodates your style. You've got 3 approaches to every mission: Ghost, non-lethal stealth, Panther, lethal but still sneaky, or Assault, guns blazing. The level design is clever, with multiple paths and tools to suit how you want to play. The gadgets are classic Splinter Cell, but with some new toys to keep things fresh. Sticky cams, tri-rotor drones, and the trusty karambit knife make every encounter feel tactical. The return of the iconic mark and execute system lets you chain together quick takedowns, which feels as smooth as ever. The only downside, I think, is the story doesn't hit the emotional highs of earlier games like Chaos Theory, and some fans might miss Michael Ironside as Sam Fisher's voice. Still, Eric Johnson does a solid job of bringing a younger, more agile Sam to life. Splinter Cell Blacklist is a game that caters to both die-hard stealth fans and newcomers looking for a mix of strategy and action. It's sleek, challenging, and packed with memorable moments, making it a worthy addition to the series. If you're itching for a game where patience and planning are just as rewarding as brute force, this one's got you covered. The Saboteur. The Saboteur is a game that feels like it flew under the radar, but it's got so much going for it that it deserves a second look. Set in Nazi-occupied Paris during World War II, it puts you in the boots of Sean Devlin, an Irish mechanic turned resistance fighter with a grudge. I think of it as an open-world revenge story mixed with stealth, sabotage, and a bit of old-school charm. What immediately sets the Saboteur apart is its striking visual style. Early on, the game uses black and white visuals to represent areas under heavy Nazi control. Says you liberate parts of the city and inspire the locals to fight back. Color gradually returns to the world, creating this really satisfying and symbolic contrast. It's more than just a gimmick, it gives a tangible sense of progress and hope as you dismantle the enemy's grip on Paris. Gameplay is all about choice. You can go in guns blazing, sneak around using disguises, or climb rooftops for a more parkour style approach. The open world design encourages experimentation, and whether you're blowing up watchtowers, sabotaging tanks, or just picking fights with Nazi patrols, it always feels like you're making a difference. Sean himself is a big part of the game's charm. He's a scrappy, no-nonsense character with a lot of personality, and his Irish wit adds some much-needed levity to the darker setting. The supporting cast, while not as fleshed out as Sean, includes a mix of resistance fighters and shady characters who help push the story forward. Paris in the Saboteur isn't just a backdrop, it's a playground. The city is packed with detail, from bustling streets to quiet countryside hideouts, and climbing to the top of landmarks like the Eiffel Tower for a bird's eye view never gets old. Add in a period-appropriate soundtrack with jazz and big band hits, and the atmosphere feels spot on. If there's a downside, it's that the mechanics can feel a little dated. The shooting and stealth aren't as refined as other games in the genre, and the AI can be inconsistent, but the overall experience with its unique style and mix of gameplay options more than makes up for it. The Saboteur might not be perfect, but it's ambitious and packed with personality. It's a love letter to resistance stories with a unique visual twist and plenty of opportunities to cause chaos. If you're a fan of open world games and haven't tried this one yet, it's absolutely worth checking out. There's nothing quite like taking on the Nazis with dynamite and a pint of whiskey.
Under my knife. Not like this. There's nowhere you can run. I'll find you wherever you go.
Blair Witch.
Right? About the witch?
Blair Witch takes the creepy atmosphere of the cult classic film and transforms it into a slow-burning, psychological horror game that messes with your head in all the right ways. It's set in 1996, and you play as Ellis, a former cop with a troubled past who joins the search for a missing boy in the infamous Black Hills forest. As you'd expect, things don't go as planned. From the start, the game nails the tension. The Black Hills forest is dense, disorienting, and unsettling, with every shadow and sound feeling like it's hiding something. You're never quite sure if the forest itself is alive, or if it's just your mind playing tricks on you. The atmosphere is thick with dread, and it only gets worse the deeper you go. A key part of the game is your dog, Bullet, who's not just there for emotional support, he's essential to survival. Bullet helps you track scents, find clues, and even warns you of danger. The bond you form with him is one of the game's strongest points. You'll rely on him a lot, and keeping him close feels like your only lifeline in a world that's constantly trying to isolate you. The gameplay is a mix of exploration, puzzle solving, and survival elements. One of the coolest mechanics involves an old camcorder you find early on. You use it to watch tapes that can manipulate the environment around you, like rewinding a tape to make a fallen tree magically stand up again. It's a unique twist that ties into the game's theme of fractured reality. Combat isn't a focus here. You'll face shadowy creatures, but instead of fighting them head-on, you'll use your flashlight to drive them away. It's simple but effective, and it keeps the tension high without turning the game into an action fest. The story dives deep into Ellis's psyche, exploring themes of guilt, trauma, and redemption. The forest messes with his mind, making you question what's real and what's hallucination. The pacing can feel uneven at times, with some sections dragging a bit, but the narrative payoff is worth it. Visually, the game captures the eerie, overgrown look of the Black Hills forest perfectly. The sound design is top-notch, with every crackling branch and distant whisper adding to the unease. Pair that with a dynamic lighting system, and you've got a setting that feels alive and hostile. Blair Witch is a game that thrives on subtlety and psychological horror. It's not just about jump scares, it's about getting under your skin and staying there. If you're a fan of slow burn horror and don't mind a little introspection with your scares, it's well worth a playthrough. Just don't get too comfortable. This forest has a way of turning everything against you.
Jess.
Chants of Sennaar. Chants of Sennaar is one of those rare puzzle games that feels like a journey into the heart of language and culture. It's a deeply atmospheric experience where the focus isn't just on solving puzzles, but on unraveling the mysteries of communication in a beautifully crafted, otherworldly setting. The game drops you into a towering labyrinthine city inspired by the myth of the Tower of Babel. Different factions inhabit the tower, each speaking their own language, and your goal is to bridge the divide by deciphering their scripts and learning to communicate. It's a fascinating concept, and the game executes it with elegance. At its core, Chants of Sennaar is about exploration and observation. You'll be piecing together languages by noticing patterns and symbols, gestures and contexts, almost like an amateur linguist. The game doesn't hold your hand, it trusts you to pay attention, experiment, and make connections. When you finally decode a new word or phrase, the sense of accomplishment is immense. The world itself is stunning. The art style is bold and minimalist, with clean lines and vibrant colors that make every area feel distinct and alive. Each part of the tower reflects the culture of the people living there, from their architecture to their clothing, and it all ties back to the overarching theme of diversity and connection. What's really impressive is how Chants of Sennaar uses its mechanics to immerse you in its themes. As you learn to communicate, you start to bridge gaps between factions, solving not just puzzles but conflicts. It's a subtle but powerful way of showing the importance of understanding and empathy. The soundtrack complements the experience perfectly. It's understated and atmospheric, enhancing the sense of wonder and discovery without ever overpowering the gameplay. But now, if there's a downside, it's that the game demands patience. Some puzzles can feel obtuse, and the lack of explicit guidance might frustrate players who prefer a more direct approach. But for those who enjoy taking their time and figuring things out organically, it's all part of the charm. Chants of Sennaar is more than just a puzzle game, it's an exploration of language, culture, and the barriers that divide us. It's thought-provoking, visually striking, and endlessly rewarding for players willing to dive deep into its intricate world. If you're looking for a game that challenges your mind while telling a quiet but meaningful story, this one's a must-play. Agatha Christie murder on the Orient Express.
He died from multiple stab wounds of varying...
The 2023 Murder on the Orient Express by Microids puts a fresh spin on one of the most famous mysteries ever written. You still have the iconic train, the suspenseful murder investigation, and Hercule Poirot at the center of it all, but this version adds some new twists and a few surprises to keep things interesting, even if you already know the story. This time, you don't just play as Poirot, you also step into the role of Joanna Locke, a young investigator who's learning the ropes. It's a cool dynamic because you get to see Poirot's genius from a different perspective, while also experiencing the investigation in a more hands-on way, Joanna's character brings a fresh angle to the classic Hood unit. The train itself is a highlight. The way it's designed really pulls you into the 1930s vibe, glossy wood paneling, cozy cabins, and all the little details that make the Orient Express feel like a character of its own. The passengers each have their own unique look and personality, so it's fun to dig into their stories and figure out who's hiding something.
I have taken the liberty of ordering you your lunch.
When it comes to gameplay, it's a mix of exploring, solving puzzles, and interrogating suspects. Poirot's mind maps let you piece together clues, and the puzzles are just the right level of challenge, not so hard that you'll be stuck for hours, but still satisfying when you figure them out. The interrogations are a highlight, especially when you catch someone in a lie or notice something they're not saying. The story sticks to the spirit of the original, but throws in a few curveballs to keep it fresh. It adds some action and drama that weren't in the book, which helps keep the pace moving. Some purists might feel like the changes aren't necessary, but they do add a bit of excitement for players who already know the ending. All in all, Murder on the Orient Express is a fun and modern take on a classic mystery. It's familiar enough to please fans of the book, but adds enough new elements to feel fresh. If you're into detective games or just love a good mystery, this is worth a try, whether it's your first time on the train or your fifth.
Have you told me the entire truth, Captain Arbuthnot?
Of course. I want you to find my ticket.